at different times. Henry James, Edith Wharton, T.S. Eliot were looking for the old civilization. Well, I'm not looking for that. The new generation, I go to London, places all over Europe crowded with middle-class Americans. They don't want their children to be brought up here. They want to get out of here. I don't mean just L.A. They want to get out of the whole place. And there's been a quiet exodus, which is a very interesting story I recommend to any journalist, though the media might not want to pick up on it. I've been reading the American press for half a century. I have never read a story favorable to another country. Swedes have better education, better medical care, but they're all alcoholic and practice free love and commit suicide.
Why this jingoism?
I think because the ownership of the country, which is about 1%, knows they control the media, and they know perfectly well that if the people knew to what extent they were being ripped off. We pay quite high taxes, and they're talking about tax increases, particularly for the middle class, nothing for corporations, naturally. If the people realize that they get nothing back, there's no health care, there is in every civilized country, no educational system for the general public. Cities are falling apart. The whole thing is a mess, and it's a ripoff. Well, they've got to keep this laughing gas going, which they do through media, through television, through newspapers. We're the greatest. We're number one. We're this. We're that. Nobody wants to live here. Yes, south of the border they want to because we have ripped them off, so they come here, illegal immigrants. I cannot think of the last time a Swede elected to live in New York City rather than in Sweden.
In your books, you examine leadership and class, ruling families. What has become of that class? Has it vanished, leaving us only with plutocrats and pop stars?
Well, that political class, it still goes on. It controls all the banking in the country. All of that is pure wasp, but it's given up pretty much on the political end. And that's how the country is run. And the people are helpless. They have no representation. A senator from California is usually a senator for Northrop, and Lockheed, and Boeing, and Aerospace, and real estate lobby. The senator doesn't represent the people of the state. As the Packwood diaries are telling us, if you skip the sex in Senator Packwood's diaries, which is pretty boring, get to the deals.
The sex is boring, or the rest of it?
Well, his sex is boring. Get to the rest of it, which is how they cut the deals, and what he really feels about the folks, which is that the people out there at large are just invisible to him, nuisances. Why on earth do they come to his office and bore him? He has assistants.
So there
is no noblesse oblige to finally answer your question. That the sort of person who went into politics at the time of the Adams family and so on is now gone. Or when somebody from that class does get in, he turns out to be sort of dysfunctional, like George Bush, who is of the noblesse oblige class, but was not very effective.
You ran for Congress some dozen years after publishing what was called the first homosexual novel, The City and the Pillar, and you wrote that journalists were amazed that I dared to run for office. They did not realize that their sort of inside gossip was almost impossible to transmit to the public in those days. If one had not been in a courtroom, there was nothing to talk about. Well, things are different now. Are we any better off now that all the practices and preferences, whatever you name it, are out in the open?
No. Oprah names it. I don't name it. I don't talk much about other people in that sense. But, well, yes, there is you see, you cannot talk about politics in the United States. It's not done. You can talk about personalities. You can't talk about who gets taxed and where the tax money goes, because it all goes for war and has for 50 years. Since you can't talk about that, because the media won't let you, they don't want you to talk about it. Well, what else have you? Is he a nice man? Is she a nice woman running for office? Well, you have that. I'm interested in taxes, the budget, and I'm interested in how the people are being screwed by the ownership of the country. That's the real subject. I can get up there and name names. I can tell you who's taking what money, what bribes. That's the whole reason I went to the Senate race in '82, was to find that out. I have no interest at all in the sex life of President Clinton, nor should anybody else. It shows the ultimate frivolity of a society that cannot get any priorities straight because they are uneducated. They're mostly religious bigots now of one sort or another, and they're pumped up with laughing gas through the media. So they really are not sane on most subjects. It's a pity to have to be so harsh about my countrymen, but I'm saying it in a tone of sorrow, not of anger. It's been done to us by those who have a real interest in keeping the electorate ignorant and in making as much money as they can out of them. It's like a bunch of people taking over corporations, stripping the assets is what's been happening for the last 30 years.
In 1967, you wrote an essay about a book that had just come out that has now become a part of the American vocabulary again, The Paranoid Style of Politics by Richard Hofstadter. What about our domestic paranoia that seems to be in resurgence in this country?
Well, it's inevitable. What I've been talking about now would be regarded by some as part of the paranoid style, because I'm talking about them. You're not allowed to talk about them in the United States because the ruling classes, we're not supposed to have one. It just isn't there.
Class is our dirty word.
That's the one word you can't ever mention, but of course it's there. And it's a very clever ruling class. They've been in business for over 200 years. So what I've been saying would be filed under that by those who don't want to be revealed. What you saw in Oklahoma City is pretty much my emotions about the intrusiveness and the brutality of the American government. The American government does not like the American people, and it has no connection with them at all. And now that we're out of the empire business because we've run out of money, there's only one enemy left for this government, which is a permanent wartime arbitrary government. That's the American people. They are now building more prisons than schools. They want to get as many people in prison as they possibly can. How do you get them in prison? You invent a prohibition. You cannot drink alcohol. You cannot smoke pot. 3 strikes and you're out. And we now have 5 million people in the United States either in prison or on parole or some kind of detention. This is a scandal, and most of them are for victimless crimes. This is a true scandal. Now, the militiamen of Montana hate the government as much as the government hates them. And I must say, as much as I hate the government. So I'm, in this case, as one with them.
Sounds like a syllogism.
Well, it's, they're on the right track, but since they are rather simple, not to mention idiotic folk, most of them, they go around and blow up buildings when, if I were they, you'd go to the courts. And you would do, I would go, obviously, through the legal process, not through violence. This is just the beginning of the violence in the country. And they are the future. These guys with the guns and the flags and all the nonsense. Get rid of this government. They've given up on it. Now, you'd think a government which had a brainless head, and I mean FBI, CIA, all these undercover people, if you found a bunch of people who so hated the government, who so hated you in Washington, for good reasons, for bad reasons, for bigoted reasons, no matter what reason, they say, leave them alone. Let them live on Ruby Ridge by themselves. Oh, no. We have to go in and kill them. And it's the killing of people. Waco, here's a religious nut who's got some followers. First, they start the propaganda machine. It's always meddling with children sexually now. This is supposed to get the American people just frothing with rage. Most of the time, it isn't true, but it doesn't make any difference once the propaganda machine starts. So suddenly he's portrayed as somebody who is having sex with poor little children, who's torturing his people, and they go in and kill them. The American government is basically not only autocratic now, it's out of control. The people are reacting as best they know how, and it's led to great tragedies like Oklahoma City.